The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Hello, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin. As always, thank you for clicking on this network, and thank you to my guest, Steve Carberry, who has joined me today. Steve, welcome.
Morning, Peter. How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So I had asked Steve to join us. Steve, as you may know, has a long career, and sorry, Steve, on the long, has a distinguished career in healthcare facilities management. So Steve has worked for some prestigious organizations, made his way up to vice president level. Steve now has a consulting business. Steve went to the Maritime Academy. Steve has an interesting background, all things to do with healthcare facilities management. As we like to do on the network is just to share the stories, because every time somebody hears a story, there's an opportunity that comes out of that. And so I'm very happy that Steve joined us today. It's a beautiful fall day up here in New England. I'm sure it's the same down in Connecticut, Steve.
Same. Yeah.
Same. So
Trees are
Steve, you
popping.
walked into, talking about your career, you walked into Greenwich Hospital, Greenwich, Connecticut, 1986. You're a hospital employee. How have you seen the industry evolve, and what has changed over the year? 86 doesn't seem like long ago. I mean, I know people weren't even born who are listening to this, but I'm remembering the Mets playing the Red Sox, and it seems like yesterday.
Yeah. It seems like yesterday for me too. And yeah, it's a different world. I get asked that question a lot. How has it changed? And I put it in perspective. I say, well, when I walked in the door, the TVs only had 13 channels, and the thermostats were analog and pneumatic. So, we've the healthcare business has changed quite a bit. The buildings were, a lot older, we were back in the plant technology and safety era of, the Joint Commission guidelines back then, and that was probably one of my first tasks was to rewrite our policy and procedures book, which was a great start, to learn the business coming from the marine industry and transitioning to healthcare. It really gave me a good, start and a good footing to learn the healthcare business. When I was hired, my background was, in power generation, in boilers, turbines, generators, air conditioning, electrical systems, and I had to learn the healthcare business. And so understanding the Joint Commission and Department of Health process was very helpful in getting me up and running short period of time.
What were you hired in? What role were you hired in for, Steve?
So I was hired as the Assistant Director of Engineering, a position that no longer exists, as organizations have become flatter and flatter and flatter. So very lucky. The gentleman who hired me was also a SUNY Maritime College graduate. So we had a commonality, and, he brought me along.
Yeah. So back in 1986, now Greenwich is a very well-to-do area, still is. Back in 86, do you recall, was it did it still have lots of cash behind it? Was it prestige? What was it like walking into that environment where expectations are high and your clientele is high? And what was that like for you to learn in a hospital?
So yeah, Greenwich was, a pretty unique organization. We were a standalone hospital. You were right, a very prestigious neighborhood, very high end. The facilities were old, but they early on embraced, patient experience and high patient care. And so even though the buildings were older, they made sure that the experience of coming to the hospital was terrific, from the food, the nursing, the care, you name it. It was a different experience. I do remember up on 6 North, they had a little cart for happy hour, and that was a different time. You don't have that anymore, but that was one of the things that I remembered was service, just as you would expect in a Hilton or a Hyatt.
Yeah.
And then
Why did
they took it from there.
So what did, and just again, thinking back to, and I want to ask you a little bit about your Merchant Marine Academy background as well, but what was it about that role in hospital healthcare that attracted you?
Great question. So previously, I had been working in the merchant marine business. I had sailed coming out of college on a container ship going back and forth to the Far East.
Okay.
That job was a great job, great ship, great ports, but the shipping industry was facing a downturn in the early 80s, and I came ashore, had a job as a marine surveyor going around looking at wrecked ships for insurance companies, basically as similar to an adjuster role. But
Yeah.
I learned an awful lot about repair work and negotiations in shipyards, dealing with clients and ship's crews and shipyard crews, high value cargo transfer, a lot of responsibility for a very young
Yeah.
person, at 24, 25, 26,
Yeah.
and traveled around, all the way up to the North Slope of Alaska. So it's a great job, but that company faced the downturn in the marine industry and, wound up moving over to Greenwich Hospital, as I said before. So, having that background, really helped me transition into healthcare.
Was that your first job coming out of college?
No, my first job was sailing as a third assistant engineering officer on that container ship,
Okay.
and then the
Okay.
marine surveyor job, and
Okay.
then just actually my third job. Yeah.
So do I've always, you must know Paul Cantrell, who works
Yes.
here.
Yes.
So Paul has obviously like kind of a similar background to you on ships and all. I've always wanted to ask him, and I haven't, but since you're, as I've said before, I love the weather. I love the ocean. We're close to the ocean. Do you recall, is there a scary moment from your experience when you were maybe going over to Alaska or wherever where you were on the ocean and you're like, oh my God, because I just finished reading, I don't know if you've ever read it, about the container that broke apart off of Cape Cod in the 1950s. The Finest Hour is the book. It's about the Coast Guard, a little Coast Guard 32-footer that went out and saved
Sure.
guys off a container ship that had
I've seen the
split.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a movie. There's a
Yeah.
movie too. I'm actually gonna have Vince Patton on from the Coast Guard to talk about that. But do you
Right.
recall, and obviously a moment where you were scared witless?
Not scared witless. I mean, we had a pretty great crew on the ship. But I do remember one evening, I would get off watch. I stood an 8 to 12 watch. I was good friends with the third mate who stood the 12 to 4 watch. And so, you come off watch, you're a little sweaty, you're a little wound up. And I went up to the bridge, so an engineer goes up to the bridge, have a cup of tea, have a little bit of chat before you, go back to your bunk and your stateroom and relax because you're back on watch at 8 o'clock the next morning. And we were in a very violent storm coming out of Yokohama, heading back across the Pacific for Oakland, California, and a full load of containers. So we're coming out of the port, and it's good, 15, 20-foot seas, 25-foot seas. So this is a 700-foot container ship. And, it's rocking pretty well. And I'm standing up on the edge of the bridge and I see a white light in front of us. And I turn to the mate and I go, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "See what?" And I said, "Come over here." And it pops up in front of the boxes again. And he goes, "Holy crap." They checked the radar and nothing on the radar, but he orders a hard to starboard. And we look down the side of the ship and there's a Japanese fishing vessel that we almost ran over.
Wow.
And he said, "If you weren't up here, we would never have seen that. We would have run them right over."
Wow.
And we both had chills coming down our spine that night. And I was like, okay, that's one for the books. And so, I think that both was a little bit of pucker time for him and the mate who was on the wheel. So that was a memorable event.
Yes.
Very memorable event. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Closest we got.
you visualize that it must be, your natural inclination. Like if you're here on land, you turn a light on and you see what's in front of you, but you're out in the ocean and you're dependent upon it. It must be a strange visual to see it.
pop up, and they rely very heavily on the radar, and why it was not on the radar was a whole nother question. So it wasn't a very big boat either, so maybe 100-footer, and they were getting tossed in the storm, that's for sure. So yeah, quite lucky.
Yeah. Yes, quite so. So this is Peter Martin. If you or your organization is interested in advertising or partnering with the Healthcare Facilities Network, including sponsoring content, then please email me using the barcode in the lower right of your screen. From the trades level to the vice president level, from planning, design, construction, project management, compliance, safety, and security, the Healthcare Facilities Network reaches FM people where FM people. I know that you're very involved with and you're passionate about your alma mater, the Merchant Marine Academy in the Bronx.
SUNY Maritime College in the Bronx. Yes.
SUNY Maritime College in the Bronx. And I think you alluded to it a little bit before we started to tape, but how do you see maritime academies playing into help to alleviate this employee shortages that we see and that are going to continue on? How can maritime academies be a solution, continue to be a solution, because they've been a solution because they've supplied a lot of people, but what can they do to help?
So we've actually had that conversation with some of the folks at SUNY Maritime College, and I have friends of mine, a classmate of mine is in the facilities engineering program. They've actually built a new mini steam plant, if you will, in their engineering building. And the whole idea is that it will give students practical shoreside steam knowledge. So they have a small Cleaver Brooks boiler that runs on 2 oil, and that gets fired up and then will run a small steam turbine, but it also runs some heat exchangers and pneumatic controls, steam reducing stations, and gives real hands-on experience of what it's like to bring up pressure. And as we say, can he make vacuum? You'd have to make vacuum on the condenser on the ship in order to get everything to work, and that was always a true test. And the reason it's important is the shipping industry is now almost all diesel ships, and so that steam plant experience is going to go by the wayside. But yet here we are shoreside, and we still rely very heavily on steam. And so a lot of the plant operators that you would get were either merchant marine or Navy trained steam plant operators. And if you've ever been on a steam plant on a ship, it is very, very compact. And so you really have to spend a lot of time, as we would say, tracing lines and understanding your systems so that you know where everything comes from. If you can learn it in that environment, that's moving at 17 knots, pitching up and down, and as we say, you've got to know how to fix stuff, because there's no tow truck coming to get you if you break down on the side of the canal. You've really got to understand how to repair what you operate, and it's a very intense environment. So the schools are going to have to continue to help put out the right type of folks, that STEAM experience. They do a great job on controls and leadership, and maintenance and repair work. That piece of the equation they do a phenomenal job at, and really it's that leadership and experience and that engineering background that we look for. We'll supplement the STEAM experience if we need to, but those young folks come out of those schools and they are ready to go to work. They have actual operating experience going on the training ship, and the 5 academies currently are all getting converted over to diesel electric ships. Highly automated, beautiful physical plant, but a different operating system than what we're used to. I mean, they are training merchant marine officers. They're not training hospital engineers. That's their mission. But we'll still take them all and get them some STEAM experience, and they'll pick it up. They're taught it. They understand the theory, but they'll they'll still be my first choice.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'd imagine too, as I was listening to you speak, and I've talked a little bit to the folks down at Mass Maritime Academy in Bourne, and they talk about the competition for the students coming out of these academies for
Yes.
everything that you've just mentioned. I'd imagine kind of the demographic. And were you like this? If you can think back, you must have wanted to go to, did you go there because you wanted to get that engineering education, but also go to see and maybe see the world a little bit before you settled?
It's, yeah, I definitely, picked the school because it was a unique opportunity. Even back, when I entered there in 1976, they were offering 100% guaranteed employment.
Yeah.
And so that is still pretty much the case today.
Yeah.
That everybody comes out of there has a job waiting for them at least within 4 months of graduation.
Yeah.
Very few schools get to say that other than the medical schools. But yeah, the whole idea of coming out, going to see, and the money was great back then. I mean, we made a lot of money. They still do quite well. And even 10 years after graduation, they are still setting record salaries, right up there with the Harvards and the MITs, believe it or not. The state maritime academies are very well thought of. So that was the exciting part. But then you come out and you realize that with that experience and that degree, the world is your oyster. And I, always tell people, you come in school, you're like this, but then you get out and you realize I can do anything I want with that background. And we constantly mentor students and graduates that, there are plenty of possibilities. And certainly healthcare is one of them. And like, I didn't even think I would work in a hospital when I was in school. I mean, they were full of sick patients and they smelled. Well, Greenwich was not that case. It didn't smell. And I said, I really, really enjoyed it. And one of the attractions for me was, I got to fix my own stuff. And I love to fix stuff. I mean, that's what gets me going. And, then I caught the bug. Hey, not only do you get to fix it, you get to build stuff.
Yeah.
And then, when I got involved in some construction projects, my whole career kind of turned into the project side of the equation. And, I tell, folks that I mentor all the time, I learned a lot more about operating facilities after you learned how to build them and why you build them a certain way. You have a much greater appreciation for why the operation has to be the way it is. And so, it all comes together in that, sort of equation.
Did you end up enjoying the design construction element of the role more than the facility management part of the role?
Well, yeah, to a certain degree, if I look back, the operational piece is very, cyclic. You go through your year and heating season, cooling season, shoveling snow, maintenance and repair. Very cyclic, but the design and construction stuff, you're always doing a new project. There's always a beginning and middle and end to those projects. And you move on to bigger and better things. My first project was working on a 550 car parking garage. Great way to, learn. It's not very complicated, not a lot of risk.
Right.
Had a lot of great architects and contractors and engineers that I still talk to today. We got that done. Then I built a cancer center, which was about 28,000 square feet with an underground parking garage. And then I wound up, building 2 hospitals on that site, over, 13-year period. And so, you progress your way up. And, I'm very thankful that I had a lot of great folks that taught me a lot of stuff along the way and gave me opportunity along the way.
Right.
So you didn't learn it all in the first day, that's for sure.
No, you did. It's amazing how much parking you build. You never build enough. It's never enough.
Yep.
So I wanted to, you were kind enough to respond to the survey that we had placed out in the fall, and you had a lot of insightful comments on there. But one of the ones you wrote, and it speaks to kind of what we're talking about relative to a lack of employees coming in and the need that we have. But you wrote, we have flattened our organizational structures to the point where the career ladder was eliminated. When we lost positions such as the assistant director of engineering, right? That's yours.
Right.
We lost our succession planning and pipeline ability. We talk about that a lot, Steve, that elimination and how it's just killing us right now. What are is that ever coming back? What are your thoughts on?
I mean, do I see it ever coming back the way it was? No, I think we have to think differently about it. You know, there are different, you know, terms that are used today. You know, what might have been an assistant director might be a manager or a coordinator today. But, you know, having those layers, I mean, I was lucky enough to be an assistant director of engineering. And when my boss left, who was the director, you know, I got moved right up. You know, it was a conversation in the office that said, are you ready to take over on Monday? And I was like, yeah, I know the plan. Because I had done everything.
How long were you the assistant director for?
About 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I became a director, you know, about 31 years of age. You know, I had a great boss, great mentors, you know, trusted me, and, you know, I worked hard. I put the hours in, and, but you know, I really enjoyed it, and, you know, learned quite a bit. So, you know, the challenge for me is, you know, I was a vice president, was where is my next replacement going to come from? And, you know, I had a unique ability at Greenwich, which I transferred up to Yale New Haven, of you know, having the engineering background, but having the project background, which is normally handled by you know, somebody with an architectural background. But I also developed a really great real estate team over a period of time. So I sort of had the three main pillars of facilities management under my belt by the time I had, you know, run my course at Greenwich, and, you know, we became part of Yale New Haven, and they said, okay, guess what? You're going up to New Haven to start a corporate facilities group, you know, which I, you know, ran for about, you know, 12 years, and you know, we've accomplished quite a bit. I think one of the things that was a challenge is it was still siloed underneath me. You know, we needed to grow to the next level to make that next level of leaders really work for a system that large. You know, we were still very specialized, but I think, you know, that's, you know, when you get to that VP, senior VP level, you've got to have a lot of those experiences under your belt. And with siloed structures and very flat structures, you know, it gets to be tough. There was no assistant vice president under me that oversaw my stuff. You know, maybe when I wasn't there, you know, everybody was very specialized. And I think, you know, how do you get that experience? And I try to, you know, give some of my subordinates different experiences. My head of engineering, you know, we had a fire at a nursing home, and I put him in charge of that renovation to get that project management experience. You know, it was you know, a little bit of a risk, but, you know, he had a project manager from FD&C underneath him. So, you know, but it gave him that experience, and made sure that the FD&C folks were involved in commissioning, so that they understood the engineering side of what they were turning over to the operating engineers at the end of the day, so that there was that crossover that happened. And the real estate folks would be very much involved with the design of a, you know, new office building, so that, you know, they got to appreciate what they were delivering to the next team. So, and they all work great together. I mean, we had such a terrific bunch that met together. You know, I hear a lot of different organizations will maybe have real estate reporting off to finance, because real estate is a financial transaction. You know, it's at the end of the day, your previous session, you got to talk CFO. Well, your real estate guys really got to talk CFO. And it was a great session. But that's where we started to try and build that cross-pollination so that, any one of them could take over.
So I guess I never really thought about that before. You just mentioned it. You got rid of, the assistant director role is gone. We don't often think of kind of like at the vice president level where you were, but so you didn't have that barrier. Did you have all your directors report in your various areas reporting right up to you directly?
Yes. Yeah. I had a layer of executive directors and directors reporting to me.
Yeah.
And there was about 5-6 folks that, were my direct reports, and, kept them all, working together. We'd meet together as a team.
Yeah.
So that we had that cross pollination, and, they got to hear what everybody else was working on. And, but then I'd meet with them individually as well.
Yeah.
So
How did you go about, Steve, eliminating silos that existed when you took over? What did you do?
well, a lot of it was meeting in person, so that everybody knew we were on the same team. And they knew they had to come to my office and face each other at least once a month, if not twice a month. So there was no finger pointing, and you just create that culture that, and we're all on this together. And I would draw the map of, a typical project where, real estate's the pointy end of the spear. They got to do a deal, but they have to hand it off to the ambulatory design team.
Yeah.
And the ambulatory design team then has to hand that off to the facilities engineers to operate it if it's a licensed facility. And so I said, you're all in this together, and I don't want to hear you guys designed a piece of junk and handed it over to me. The engineering guys, you got to be at the table with the design guys to get what you want. I'll support you, but you got to speak up.
Yeah.
You can't sit there and go, you gave me crap. No. I'm not going to give you everything. You may not get a Cadillac, you might get an Oldsmobile, but I really worked hard to make sure that conversation took place, because I'd been in all of those seats, and I want to make sure at the end of the day we were delivering a quality product that everybody was proud of.
Yep.
So those conversations were very, very critical.
Going back to your education and going back to, the maritime academies and pumping out graduates with that engineering background. We're seeing less of that in today's world with folks coming out with that engineering background. What's the impact of that skill set loss or education-based loss in today's facilities world?
It's really making it tougher. We're all scratching for the same small pool of talent. I compete with architecture and engineering folks. I compete with the CMs and the GCs of the world. I'm competing with universities across the street, that I lose people to because they pay more. So that's a challenge. And then there are other industries that are out there, hedge funds that are looking for somebody to run a data center that they're paying gobs of money to, and it just gets tougher and tougher and tougher now. But we try to create an environment where it was, I'd like to say, fun to come to work. It was always high pressure, but we had a great environment. And I think one of the things that people knew, my team, our team, at Yale New Haven, we had our stuff together. We worked hard. We had high standards, but we all got along and we were very professional. And I think that was attractive to a lot of folks. And you were home every night. You knew where you were going to go every day. Folks that left the construction management firms knew, I could go to work there, and I know where I'm going to be every day. Which was very helpful for them in their family life. And we made sure that family first. Works there, we'll be there. We've had a few folks that have had a tough go of it. And I made the investment and say, you take the time now, because I'm going to get it back later on. And they really appreciated that. So that's the culture that you have to build.
I'm wondering if, as you were hiring, and we've done a couple of shows where we talked to the millennial group, because I'd love to hear their perspective, because it's a little bit different than what ours was. But one of the things, and I'm wondering if you saw this or you've seen this relative to the younger generations, they are much less, they don't put up with as much inefficiency or as much chaos as I know that I did, and probably you did too. They're much more demanding. And I say that their expectations in a good way, like they don't want to work in a chaotic environment. They want to know you're going in a straight line. They can deal with some, they
Yeah,
can
a little
deal
bit of
with
static
chaos,
on the edge.
but are you going the right way? Do you find that amongst younger generations that's different than ours?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think probably one of the most surprising thing, that I saw was, they're on the job 6, 9 months and they want to know when their next promotion is going to be. But you're right. They don't deal with a lot of static. They're not used to large organizations that take a long time to affect change or
Yeah.
create new positions or salary adjustments that happen midstream. It is, I think, a bit of a shock to them, but that's where their patience gets a little thin. Why can't I get a promotion or a raise 9 months into whatever I'm doing? Well, we have a fiscal year and we have a cycle, and you have to review 26,000 employees. So we have a process that everybody does, online, and we meet individually, but that's done in a certain cycle time. That can be challenging, and they may like the freedom of a smaller firm that can read and react quicker. So you sign on to a large academic healthcare system. I said, the ride is like being on a super tanker. It doesn't stop quickly. It doesn't change course quickly, but it keeps moving. And I said the advantages are, we did great work on not only on the facility side, but on the healthcare side. The healthcare successes were truly amazing at academic level. I mean, it is the highest level, and it's great to be able to support that work and build some of the coolest stuff to support some of the greatest physicians in the world. That was truly gratifying. And so that's you have to sort of get them away from what they're worried about to what they're really doing in the mission, and say, this is the important stuff. The other stuff will solve its stuff. Stay focused on the mission. And I used to say all the time, go to the ribbon cutting and enjoy it, because it's the best part of that project, because humans take over that space tomorrow and it's never going to be the same. But enjoy what you built. And I actually stopped going to ribbon cuttings, and I made sure my project managers went and were in the picture, so that they got the picture and the high praise, and and enjoy that moment. I actually said the night before was always the best day before everything happened. So and I think that's gets their creative juices going, and keeps them going.
Well, that's a nice thing about project work. I mean, what you go through to get to that ribbon cut. You got all the stories, but it's just a tremendous sense of accomplishment when you're finally there. It's like you say, the next day is probably when all those to-do lists begin again once it's occupied. But for that one day,
enjoy it. And we had some successes on the operations side. I mean, we had some awards from ASHI on our digital optimization of our department was nationally recognized. And that was a long cycle, but we had a lot of folks that we took our department out of the dark ages and Excel spreadsheets into a highly sophisticated, automated system that was really changed the way we operated. It was really something to see at the end of the day.
This concludes episode 1. Please return to the Healthcare Facilities Network in the near future to view episode 2.